Welcome back to Spanky Gibson Produces. Now I'm Spanky Gibson, and what's the topic on today's shop talk? Yeah, back in the shop, everybody seemed to be very receptive to it, so I'm going to start shooting more videos out here. And this one's kind of an important one, and I would ask you to stick to the end because you might be surprised with the information that I have. It's about amputees. Obviously close to my heart. Why? Because I'm an above-the-knee amputee from combat. But this is not about me, and this is not about combat. It's not even really about veterans. It's about all these civilians that I run into on a monthly basis, if not a weekly basis, that are amputees. Now, you might not realize just how many amputees you'll cross in your lifetime. Whether you see someone in the store, or you unfortunately might have a family member, or more importantly, it might be you. So how do we figure out if you'll ever cross paths and why this video might be important, especially near term? Because I would like you to share this with an amputee if you know one. Now, especially a new amputee that's going through all the initial processes of getting through their new normal. Now, even if you don't think you'll ever cross paths with an amputee, chances are you will. Why is that? Here's a statistic. Nearly 500,000 Americans a year have an amputation. 465,000 are traumatic events. The other 43,000 are congenital. That means children. If you think of the 5.6 million veterans right now that are living with an amputation, and then add to that every year, we've got 340, 350 million people in this country. 10% of that would be 34 or 35 million. 10% of that is 3.5. So if there's over 5 million in the United States living with an amputation for whatever reason, chances are you're going to cross paths with an amputee. Chances are you're going to have a family member that might lose a limb. And I really hope not. You might find yourself in the position due to traumatic event, or the number one reason for amputations in the United States, type 2 diabetes, vascular injuries. Now, I yesterday interacted with two different amputees. One gentleman I met over a year ago at my granddaughter's football game. She's a cheerleader. His great-granddaughter's a cheerleader. He was a fairly new, within a year, knee dysartic. That means he has his full femur, but they removed his lower leg because of some trauma he received in the past. I naturally gravitated to him and try to help him. Yesterday, I took him a brace system that he can slide over the top of his socket. That's the upper portion of an above-the-knee amputee's assistance. And this leg strap that I gave him will help his leg from not falling off when he sits in a chair too long, especially like yesterday at 10 o'clock in the morning when it's 90 plus degrees and we spend 2 to 3 hours at the football field. Or a long drive. Or him riding his lawnmower. He's 75 years old, still mows his lawn on a riding lawnmower. So he's still an active man for his age. But the limitation of the amputation is still difficult for him. Well, I've been an amputee for 20 years. I'm only 55. I'm 20 years younger than him, but I can still give benefits as a fellow above-the-knee amputee, or in his case, at the knee. Well, what's the second one, you ask? It's a 7-year-old little girl that cheers with my granddaughter. She's a left arm congenital amputee, if you want to call her that, not an amputation. She was just born that way, just below the elbow. She's out there cheering. She has a pom-pom that she's able to, tuck between her residual limb and her side. And she goes through life like there's no difference. That's her normal. And that's the important part of this video. For older, especially like the 75-year-old gentleman or the 63-year-old gentleman that I was called about last week by a friend of ours from high school, her uncle had been in the hospital for almost a month because of diabetes, and at 63 had to have his right leg taken off below the knee. So just in the last 2 weeks, not including friends and people I communicate with anyway that are amputees, I dealt with 3 different amputations or 3 different amputees in the period of less than 2 weeks. Now, why is it important? When I first was in the hospital recovering, because I was 35 years old, I was an E7 in the Marine Corps, and the vast majority of the amputees I was at the military hospital with were all 19, 20, 21, 22 years old. And the hospital staff, the social workers, asked me to go through a program called the Amputee Coalition of America Peer Mentorship Program. Well, I'm a patient, I'm going through my own recovery, why not sit through the classes and get a little check on the box on talking to my fellow amputees? Well, it was easy there. We're all pretty much confined to the hospital, most days. And I would do that. I would do what any Marine leader, staff and CO, staff non-commissioned officer would do. Check on their Marines, soldiers, sailors, airmen that are going through this very traumatic situation. Why would I give that up once I retire? Why would I give that up out here in the real world dealing with amputees that never had the support system I had? Maybe they're on Medicaid. Maybe like in the case of the gentleman I've been working with a year, he's in a mechanical knee, not like mine, a computerized knee. A lot more difficult for him to walk, especially at his age, much more difficult to carry some. What if he wants to pick his granddaughter up or his great-granddaughter up? But he's not comfortable doing that because the knee might buckle because it's a mechanical knee. I don't have to worry about that. My computer in my knee kind of gives resistance. So when I'm carrying my grandkids, I'm more stable. That's something that amputees never think about. Definitely people not around amputees never think about. Let's take in the case the gentleman that's getting ready to get released from the hospital with a brand new right leg. He's single. He lives alone. He doesn't have a wheelchair accessible house. And when he gets released from the hospital, he's not going to be able to drive. He's going to have to gut it out to get up the stairs to get into his house. He's not going to understand, not having a shower chair, what it's going to be like to transition into his bathtub. Phantom pain. That's another thing people don't even think about. A lot of people talk about with diabetes, diabetic neuropathy. Take the diabetic neuropathy and multiply it by 10 or 20 times when your body is shocking you nonstop because it's trying to communicate with something that's no longer there. Back on the right leg amputee, having to take a driving test again because you technically are not allowed to drive now because your vehicle has to be adapted. They don't know that. They don't understand it. Future possible problems. Now, there's a lot of those. I'll give you some statistics on that, not to bore you with too much data. 45% of new amputees every year are 65 and older. 42% are 45 to 64, my age category. Men account for 75% of all amputations. Black Americans are 4 times greater because of diabetes type 2 to receive a lower limb amputation. Of that higher rate, the older age groups, 9 to 15% will die within 30 days of their amputation. 40% will most likely in the first 3 years have the other limb amputated, which now makes them a double amputee. 42% also might live past 3 years, on top of possibly losing the other limb. 35 to 45% will live past 5 years. Now, these statistics blew my mind. You know, the worst thing they told me in the hospital back in 06 at 35 years old was by the time you're 60, you'll have to have your opposite or existing amputated leg hip replacement. Chances are you'll have your knee. Well, I stayed active duty in the Marine Corps. I'm pretty lucky. I'm 55 and I have no right knee problems or either hip problems. But I'm pretty lucky. Try to stay a little bit active. Now, here's probably the greatest psychological factor that they need to understand. Depression. If I cut your leg off, what do you think you would do? I don't mean that in a morbid way, but if you could just imagine losing a limb, losing an eye, losing your hearing, losing your taste. Most of you can't rationalize that. I couldn't rationalize it when I lost my leg. It's just 1 minute I'm laying in a street bleeding to death. Next minute I'm waking up in a hospital in Landstuhl, Germany without a leg, getting a blood transfusion. I didn't have any time to loom on it. But most of these amputees I'm talking about, the diabetes, the traumatic event amputees, mainly men. I know a number of women because of type 2. They don't rationalize it. Doctors start telling them, change your diet. If you don't change your diet, this problem's going to happen. We'll increase your meds, we'll get your injections, we'll go through this process to treat your diabetes. But if you do not, and your feet become necrotic, we'll have to start amputating. And me, you get shot, you lose a leg. Pretty simple. Type 2 patients, vascular injuries to patients, start at the toes, go mid-foot, go ankle, go mid-leg. Well, what the vast number of these individuals I told you are above the age of 65, now they're going to go through multiple surgeries, possibly in a year, getting whittled away upon. That's where the depression aspect comes from. They're golden years per se, right? That's what we all like to talk about. I'm going to retire at 65. I'm going to travel. I'm going to do this. We all have probably thought about it. Even, maybe not you 20-somethings or you 30-somethings, but I'm going to tell you at 40, I wanted to be retired from the Marine Corps. So that at this age, I could spend my time traveling with my beautiful wife and enjoying and watching grandkids. And that's the life we're living. But most people don't plan for the amputation, and then it occurs. They didn't think it would happen to them, right? Woe is me. Oh, it'll never happen to me. Or that motorcycle accident, or that car accident, or that job accident that causes traumatic injury and an amputation because of it. Most of the time we don't have a chance to plan for it. And when it does happen, even if they told us it was going to happen, it drops us. We can't accept the new normal. And that's the important part. The number one problem I see with amputees, especially within the first year, is depression. They cannot accept a new normal. And that's the importance of me talking to them. I tell them how to get their driver's license back. I tell them to use a shower chair. I tell them how to transition in and out of bed, in and out of the tub. Now, they might get occupational and physical therapy. Most of them do. But they just kind of chip away at the wickets and do what they're told so they can get out of it. And then eventually, when they don't have that support network, it slaps them in the face. Now, there's all types of, the phantom pain, I would think, next to depression is probably the biggest problem. Depression is the biggest problem. But by any chance, if you know an amputee, if you are an amputee or you have a family member close to you that's an amputee, share this video with them, please. If you want more information, comment on this. Please comment. I'll get right back to you. Send my email address. Put me in contact with those that you might know. Or yourself, if you're in that position. Hope you're not. Like this video if you get something out of it. Now, I'm going to have some other videos that don't deal with amputations. I'll probably put the story of how I became an amputee to help. I'll connect it in here so that you can see it. Once again, I appreciate you guys coming back. If you're a new viewer, thank you. Once again, please subscribe, hit the notification bell. These shop talks, since this is new for me, I'm probably going to do a couple of them a week. But if I can help, please reach out. There's many of us amputees out there. You've got the Amputee Coalition of America. I'll put that in the description. You can send that link to anyone you might know. But thank you again. I know that it's a little serious to be in my shop, but I think it's very important. The last couple of weeks to me has been what I've said. It just seems like I keep crossing paths with people. And many of them seem to just be having a tough road. And we have to make life the best we can. But thank you again. Look forward to seeing you on the next Shop Talks with Spanky Gibson. And yeah, feel free to reach out and forward your information to me, or someone else's. I will definitely try to help them any way I can, point them in the right direction. So, hey, you guys have a wonderful weekend.